Greetings and salutations, knowledge seekers, and welcome to this video. This time around, I want to talk to you about some news that I read over the week that I find interesting. It's really nice to be talking about current events because they can be both educational, and it also makes my life a lot easier. Instead of me having to sit here and think about content on my own, I can actually use actual real world events that are happening around us that are going to influence our lives in a certain way, and then perhaps we can draw some lessons from those events that go a little bit beyond the headlines and can be interpreted through the prism of philosophy perhaps and personal improvement. So I want to talk to you about a financial deal that took place. My personal background is within finance, and currently I'm working at a game development company. And some of you maybe know that EA Games, one of the biggest game developers in the world, went private earlier this week on Monday. The company got valued at $55 billion, which is the biggest leverage buyout, as it's called. So a buyout is when you obviously buy a company, in this case out of the market, and then leverage means that you use a lot of debt financing in order to complete the transaction. And it got bought by Saudi Arabia, everybody's favorite democracy. Some of you maybe know that Saudi Arabia is currently pushing a lot of its assets that it has because of oil. A lot of the oil money is being transferred to different types of investments, and sports and entertainment is one of them. That helps with the public image of the country as well, right? It has the positive impact of also generating money. That's a win-win situation. So this is kind of the background of the whole thing. Now, why do I want to talk about it? How does this in any way carry a bigger lesson than the underlying headline, right? So the broker of the deal, the person that actually made it happen, that was able to influence the process behind the scenes, is Jared Kushner. Yes, the Kushman, as I like to call him, everybody's favorite strain of weed. Yeah, that guy, that's the son-in-law of the current American president. And I care a lot about politics, but I don't want to discuss politics in this particular instance. I think it's beyond the scope of this channel. Again, we are going to talk about the human aspect of it and how we can learn from this situation. But anyway, Jared Kushner, for those of you that don't know, is of Jewish descent. And Saudi Arabia is a country that does not exactly like Israel, right? His foster land, at least from I don't know, religious perspective. Presumably he is at least somewhat religious if he's Jewish, or at least he respects the Jewish tradition to a certain extent, right? I don't know him. I have no idea. I've never heard him speak, basically. He's a very private individual. So I don't know his religious beliefs necessarily, but at least his cultural heritage stems from the Jewish faith, which is obviously very closely tied to Israel, right? So he was, again, most of you probably know, the Middle East czar during the first Trump administration. And during that period of time, he fostered very close ties with Saudi Arabia's crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman. So basically, you have a Jewish boy from New York that's engaging in close personal and business relationships with the richest and the most powerful men in the Middle East, for sure, is what I wanted to say. But the richest person basically in history, right? He's not listed on the Forbes billionaire list, but he's since Saudi Arabia is a dictatorship where it has total authority over all the country's resources. He's definitely the richest person in the world. Or maybe Putin is, I don't know, one of those guys. however you want to look at it, at least up to. And I think that's a very interesting situation that those two guys have with each other, right? They basically have nothing in common, other than the fact that both of them come from money. Jared Kushner is also was also born in money. His father was also active on the New York real estate scene. Interesting fact about Mr. Kushner: he completed the most expensive real estate transaction at the time. Unfortunately for him, the time was 2008. So then the market kind of crashed. But again, what is the life lesson behind all of this background and all this back kind of story about this guy? So first and foremost, I know that it's much easier for him. He was born not on third base. He was basically born on the home plate after his father struck a home run, right? But he did fuck up. He did completely screw up his investment portfolio with this gigantic real estate deal that he did in 2008. But he did not give up. He continued. There's a lot of people, that rich people, that inherit amazing fortunes, that decide to blow it away, either as an FU to their parents, or because they are just not good enough, or because they are not confident enough in themselves, whatever the reason might be. Those people fail, and they fail miserably. And whatever you think about Jared Kushner, he didn't do that. And again, he failed, but he didn't give up, so he continued. Good lesson there. But the biggest lesson comes in relation to this deal that he just completed for me, right? Because obviously everybody is aware of the tensions that have been going on in the Middle East for the past, 70 years. And Saudi Arabia has been one of the countries that's been instrumental in those tensions. So I cannot imagine that there's a lot of cultural, religious, any other type of similarity between those two guys, Jared Kushner and Mohammed bin Salman. Nothing at all binds them other than their, shared love for money, right? That's what both of these guys like. And then this is where things become interesting. So how do professional interactions actually work, or at the highest level, in my mind? Ethics is a very interesting concept in business. I know that in a lot of universities, I've taken a class in business ethics as well. It's a very popular subject. I think it's completely irrelevant in the business world. And obviously not everybody is as two-faced as Mr. Kushner, because, let's keep it real, right? To be engaged in business dealings with people that are, actively overseeing a country that stones women and where women are treated worse than dogs, I think that's pretty low. And that's not in any way, from an ethical perspective, a morally valid standpoint, right? You wouldn't want to be that guy. Well, you wouldn't want to be that guy unless you're dealing with a situation where you can make billions of dollars. And before we judge, before we overlook the success, and we judge the individual, and we hop on a high horse and pretend like, oh, if it was me, I would be acting very differently, and I'll be better, and I know better, and I'm super ethical, and I don't do unethical things in my work. Let's keep it all the way real, right? And let's admit the fact that that's absolutely not true. Like, my behavior at work is completely different from my behavior at home. It's completely different from the way I'm talking right now. That's why I had the paper bag before, right? Because I didn't want to engage in this kind of transparent communication that could eventually come back and bite me in the behind if the wrong person found this video and had a different opinion than mine, right? And all of us do that. All of us engage in this hypocrisy at work, where we pretend we're somebody we're not, where we laugh at, our boss's jokes a little bit harder than we do at our colleagues, where, there's a colleague that we really don't like, but we kind of put up with them, or we, tolerate them, or we make these passive-aggressive comments behind their back, and, we talk a little bit of smack to our other colleagues that we trust, and we present them in a little bit more negative way than reality is, right? Um, so this is what I find interesting in our professional life. We all do this. We're all aware that we are not genuine in our interactions with our colleagues. Not all the way genuine, right? There's always this kind of strategic thinking behind what we say, how we say it, the way we interact with other people. And the question is if that's conscious or not. And I think if it's not conscious, if you're just behaving in this way because that's what you've been programmed through many years of training while living in society, then you're just a fool. Like you're doing something that's half-assed, half-baked, half thought out, and you're kind of following instead of actually leading in your own life. You're following what society tells you instead of making conscious decisions about your actions. Because when you strategize about your interactions with other people, that's called by some Machiavellian, strategic, it's manipulative, all that stuff. But then when you again laugh at your boss's jokes a little bit harder than you should do, because they're not as funny maybe as they or your boss hopes they are. That's genuine, right? There's no issues with that, because that's just kind of how things work. If everybody does it, then it's okay. But if you're the only one that's strategizing, then you're manipulative. I think that's just absolute foolishness. It's like being blind and then learning to see and being like, nah, I'd rather be blind instead. So I understand that there's this level of hypocrisy that we all engage in at work, but I draw the line here, right? I have this like arbitrary perception of how much I'm willing to compromise with my principles, and then beyond that point, I don't want to go. Why? Like, why is that a reasonable way of living? If you don't want to compromise, don't compromise at all, right? Go work in the public sector. Go, I don't know, in Sweden you can go work in the municipality or like another governmental bureaucratic organization where basically nobody cares about how they're performing at work, and your bosses are completely uninterested in what you're doing during the day, as long as you kind of do your work. Or I don't know, in the States you can go work in the DMV, right? Or if you're smart enough or if you have good grades, you can go work in academia. But in the real world, we all have to twist and turn and pretend to be somebody that we're not. And I think there's no reason for us to keep this facade and to live a lie while pretending that we don't, right? Because on the one hand, you are like, oh no, but I'm genuine and I have my principles and I'm upholding my moral values. And then on the other hand, you go to work and spend 8 hours there lying to everybody around you. But to a certain degree, right? You don't cross this imaginary line that would actually make you a liar in your specific mind. But then somebody else has different values and they have different interpretations, and then to them you're a liar and a hypocrite. And then somebody who's, a little bit more loose with their morals and their ethics, they would consider that foolish behavior like I do, because you're not going all the way with it, right? So I think there's in everything else that we do in life, the recommendation is go all the way, right? Apply yourself to the best of your abilities, to the maximum of what you can do. But when it comes to playing the game of life at work, there's this boundaries that we're supposed to set on ourselves, right? There's these limitations that we're supposed to follow, that we ourselves set, and we decide how we deal with them. And that's foolish, right? Why wouldn't I go all the way when it comes to strategizing? And why wouldn't I go all the way when it comes to trying to build relationships with my peers, even if they're not as interesting to me as I would like them to be? Why wouldn't I, even in certain situations, if it's beneficial to me and it doesn't necessarily hurt anybody else, right, act a little bit more manipulative and try to get my way, so I can put myself in a better position to provide for my family and to provide for my daughter and to provide for, the people that I care about. Why is that such a big issue? Because oh, there's moral ambiguity and there's red lines that we don't cross. Who decides that? The people in power don't care. You don't, like, when a company like Google and Microsoft or whatever, Meta, fires 4, 5, 10,000 people, who cares? Nobody, basically. Oh no, they're programmers and they're white collar workers and they can fend for themselves. The companies have the people that make these decisions, companies don't exist in a vacuum. There's people that make these decisions, and then the excuse is, yeah, but it's in the best interest of the business, right? No, it's in the best interest of you as manager. That's what it is. Because if it's not those people, it's your ass that's on the line, right? If you don't make the necessary budget cuts in order to boost your company's profits, you are gonna get fired. So when it's between me and you, I'm always gonna choose me. But then when it comes to manipulation, oh no, we don't want to do that. It's below us. We don't want to openly admit to it in any case. So yeah, the point is that the ethical norms and standards that society imposes on us should not necessarily constrain us as much as they do. And if you're uncomfortable with doing something, if it goes past your own moral compass, that's fine, right? I'm not advocating that everybody becomes this Machiavellian butthole and everybody is just out for themselves and has zero consideration for the people around them. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that if there are situations in which we can be more strategical, in which we can be smarter, in which we can overlook the simple things that are supposed to trigger us and irritate us, if there's a clear gain for us, instead of acting like a fool sometimes and, following what pride dictates to us, we can actually be a little bit more strategic, a little bit more conscientious of the ramifications of our decisions, and follow through to the best of our abilities. That's all I'm saying. And let, morality fall where it may, because at the end of the day, Mr. Kushner, when he makes his billions, he's going to donate a bunch of that to charity, or a portion of it, because it's tax deductible. And then he's going to build a bunch of schools in Africa. And what did you do with your life? While you were sitting there on a high horse talking about morality? Who has a better overall impact on society between you and Mr. Kushner in that case? Did you build any schools? Because I sure didn't. So who am I to judge a man that's gonna have this positive impact on a lot more people than I can? So let's just keep things in perspective, be a little bit more realistic with ourselves, and remember that there's a lot of shades of gray in life. Not everything is black and white. Not everything is moral or amoral. Sometimes you gotta swallow your pride and do the right thing for you from a strategic perspective. And, face the moral consequences once they arrive at your door. Don't worry about them too much. That'll be all for this one. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you enjoyed this content. If you do, please like and subscribe. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.